Pleasant good morning, and thank you very much for joining the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank live stream. I am Chelsea Stephenson, a research officer at the ACIJ, and today I'll be looking at the topic Return to Roots, Herbs and Healing in Jamaica. This topic is the focus of the research unit for the financial year 2021 to 2022. Along with this presentation, we have a Vox Pop on our YouTube channel called ACIJ in the Streets of Kingston, looking at herbal remedies, as well as conversations with ACIJ with Mr. Joseph White, an Ayurvedic expert. After watching this live stream, feel free to go and watch these other presentations. Before I continue, I'd like to make a note that there will be references to herbal medicine in this presentation, commonly used herbal remedies in Jamaica. However, this is in no way should be taken as medical advice. Herbal medicine is defined as the practice of using herbs and herbal remedies to to maintain health, prevent and alleviate and cure diseases. For centuries, many rural and urban populations have relied almost exclusively on herbal medicine as a major component of their healthcare system. Today, packaged herbs are sold by retailers for the convenience of consumers, and international bodies such as the World Health Organization have come to recognize the use of traditional medicine as an effective form of healing and encourage research to ensure the safe and effective usage of this traditional medicine. The WHO also encourages collaboration between herbal and conventional medicine in order to make healthcare more accessible to all. Herbal remedies have become a big business, and according to research from the Market Research Future in 2019, the global herbal medicine market size is expected to reach a valuation of USD $129 billion by 2023. Jamaica, with its unique flora, may be poised to take advantage of this very lucrative business. But I'll leave this discussion to the natural history experts and economists. Instead, I want to use this time to reflect on some of the traditional medicine used in Jamaica by our ancestors and those that persist today. Knowledge of herbal plants is evident across the island. However, with conventional healthcare being more accessible, the practice is not as widespread nowadays. Although there are communities, especially in rural Jamaica, which still rely on bush teas to treat their common medical concerns. Jamaicans owe a debt of gratitude to various ethnic groups. However, the breadth of knowledge about herbs in a large part comes from our African ancestors. Notwithstanding the increased access to private and public medical facilities, there has been a resurgence in the use of herbal remedies, and I will look at this later in this presentation. But first, we'll reflect on the contribution of our African ancestors. The movement of slaves into a new environment involved assimilation of African characteristics into the Caribbean society. Being uprooted from the only life and home they knew and brought as slaves to an unknown land, so they clung to the social and cultural roots they were allowed by the slave masters. The slave trade played a part in bringing both plants and practices that we still use today in our society. As Europeans brought their ideas and practices relating to illness, including standard procedures in home therapeutics and domestic medicine, so did the enslaved. Despite the cultural diversity of the West Africans who were enslaved and brought to the Americas, its traditional system of medicine shared some broad characteristics. European slave traders repeatedly noted the skill of Africans in effecting cures with plants and the expertise of particular ethnic groups. This included the Fulani, Yoruba, Dahomian, and Ashanti, who were regarded especially skilled in herbal medicine. Their system incorporated naturalistic or physical components, relying on both the plant life around them and the spiritual aspects to effect healing. As a source around of incoming slaves changed during the course of the slave trade, so did the prevailing ethnomedical traditions varied over time as the ethnic origin of the slave community was numerically dominated by one ethnic group or another. Many medical traditions and ideologies have arrived. Many medical traditions and ideologies must have arrived in the New World. The medical care of the enslaved largely fell into two categories. Sometimes these categories would overlap. The first was self help, where the enslaved, especially those who had specialized medical experience, would take care of fellow slaves. They had a keen sense of both diagnosing and treating illnesses, no matter how rudimentary these treatments might be. The next is the care provided by the slave masters or overseers. But for a large part, plantation medicine only applied to the strong or the very young, and the very young because they would grow up into a potential workforce. So the slave masters only really concentrated on this group when it came on to healthcare. So the other groups, the old and women, and those who weren't very healthy, really had fell by the wayside, and they had to rely on the medicine of fellow slaves. Neglect by slave owners and the exorbitant cost of physician services and medicine forced the enslaved to tend their own medical problems, interven- where intervention from the slave masters was absent. The slaves attempted to treat their medical problems and relied on the resources of their own communities. Despite the general evidence attesting the importance of plant medicine, Despite the general evidence attesting the importance of plant medicine to African and Creole slaves and the whites of all social classes, there is hardly any detailed accounts of specific remedies employed and how they used the plant life for healing. Although the slaves' self help involved plant medicine for a wide array of ailments, sources only vaguely indicate specific treatments or medication. Herbal treatments were often prepared from living plants rather than the dried concoctions favored by white medicine. Vitamin rich greens formed a central component of the diet of the New World Africans, and roots and herbs made into infusions, or as we know today, bush teas, remain a central part of traditional Caribbean cures. Tropical West Africa's rich tradition of using bush or herbal teas and greens for both food and medicine was undoubtedly a source of their continuing importance in the African diaspora. As a result of the transatlantic slave trade, African plants entered the Americas repeatedly over 350 years. Arriving aboard slave ships as food and medicine, these plants were grown by the New World Africans on plantation provision grounds, dooryard gardens, and subsistence plots. In this matter, more than 50 species of native African plants, such as the castor bean, which is used for lamp oil and for hair growth, and also The castor bean, which is used as a hair tonic, for lamp oil, and for medicine, still popular even today. Though West Africa and the Americas are separated by thousands of miles of ocean, these two geographical locations share some similar plant species even before the Columbian exchange, namely the butterground, which is believed to have been brought to the Caribbean via trade winds or the Atlantic Sea currents. Newly arrived slaves who practice healing in Africa continue to employ some of the common species in their healing, but they also had to adapt to the New World flora and fauna. Learning the medicinal qualities of local flora from the native herbalists was one way in continuing practicing medicine. Trial and error, of course, was the other. In the early days of colonization, Africans would work with the indigenous slaves, making transition of knowledge inevitable, and the New World Africans became the custodians of the Amerindians' botanical knowledge. An example of a plant brought during Columbian exchange is the lime. The use of lime in treatment of colds and pneumonia is common in both the Caribbean and West Africa. Both a leaf infusion and lime juice are used often with other additives that are specific to individual locations. Some areas where there was documented usage of lime during the slave trade was the Andros Islands, Bahamas, Haiti, and of course, Jamaica. It was also it is also employed in the same way in West Africa and India. The lime twig was commonly used on slave ships as a chew stick for a rudimentary form of dental hygiene. Bundles of these sticks were sold cheaply at ports in the West Indies. The coincidence of these medical uses of the lime in West Africa and in the West Indies and the approximate time of the introduction to the West Indies all points to a dissemination via the slave trade route. Even today, a popular remedy, a concoction of lime, honey, and rum, is used to soothe sore throats and treat colds. Since the abolition of slavery, the impoverished black majority populations of the Caribbean have relied on the folk medicine heritage of the enslaved. Maroons and other free black forebears have passed on to them. With a lack of access to safe and reliable health care by the poor, a lack of safe and reliable health care, especially among poorer communities, has contributed to the persistence of traditional medicinal systems as the use of plants to treat illness. In rural Jamaica, especially, people continue to rely on the roots, leaves, bark, fruits, and tree gum resins of diverse plants for healing. The knowledge of medicinal properties and the use of local plants is passed from one generation to the other, and with Jamaica's lush vegetation, there is an abundance of plant life, many of which are used as medicinal cures for various ailments. Indigenous healers and herbalists are informal experts who have been taught the knowledge of the use of local plants are often the ones tasked with administering remedies to the community members, knowing plant combination, dosage, and the duration of use. Despite their knowledge of plant use, indigenous healers will still advise their patients to seek professional medicinal attention when the illness is far beyond their reach. Communities across the island have individuals who specialize in herbal healing. They are experts in the preparation and application and various ailments that these remedies are used for. During our research, I consulted one such herbalist, Mr. Oswald Ingram from Sturtstone, St. Anne, who is aptly referred to as Herbie by his community members. Herbie grows a variety of herbs in his yard, and what he doesn't grow, he knows exactly where to find them. Some of these plants, like Jack in the Bush and guinea hen weed, grow all over the island and are very common plants known by most people. His extensive knowledge of herbs and their healing was passed down to him from his own father, and now he holds the role of Sturgetown's herbalist. He knows all the plants and their uses, as well as what plant combinations work best. By his account, the use of herbal medicine is widespread in the community, with many of its residents relying on herbal medicine for their day-to-day medical needs. However, even Herbie is quick to advise to consult medical professionals in case of more serious illnesses, which is something he reiterated throughout our discussion. Some herbs Some herbs commonly used not only in his community but during my consultation with other herbalists throughout Jamaica include leaf of life, which is used for colds, and how people mostly prepare leaf of life is they will term they use is quail, where you heat it up first and then you can either blend it and drink it or boil it into a tea, but most people don't use it straight from the tree. Spirit weed for colds, especially for young children. Soursop leaf, colds, and a lot of people say soursop leaf is good for your nerves. Spanish needle, good for colds. Strong back, used for colds and kidney trouble. Elder leaves used as a poultice for ringworm. Ramgoat rational or rational ramgoat used for colds. Peppermint for stomach ache. Cerasee for stomach aches. Pepper elder, which is a tonic, which can be made into a tonic for blood impurities and high blood pressure. Five finger, fever grass, wormweed, which is for worms and diarrhea, dandelion. Some say it's good for if a man has prostate troubles or to maintain his prostate health. King of the forest, which is for high blood pressure. Aloe vera, or as we call it, Cinco Bible, which is a immune system booster. So Cinco Bible is for medical purposes is definitely a preventative medicine. Okay. Oh, before I continue, I see someone commented Ram Goat Dash Along. Now, I said Ram Goat Rational or Rational Ram Goat, but really and truly, every community has a different name for the same plant I found. So that's another one. Thank you. Um, King of the Forest is for high blood pressure. Aloe vera, Cinco Bible, is a preventative treatment. So use it to boost the immune system. People always also use it for hair growth and for inflammation. Turmeric, which is also used for inflammation. A plant called tuna can be used for as a hair treatment and for skin conditions. Moringa, guinea hen weed, um, and this plant, some call it sarsaparilla, some call it sarsaparilla, but it's the same plant. You'll find with a lot of these plants, in every section of Jamaica, they have different names. They're known by different names. Even within a community, one plant can have a different name. And two different plants can have the same name. That is why it is very important when it comes on to administering herbal medicine to do it very carefully and also seek advice from someone who knows what they're doing. Don't just go out and pick any plant and use it, because you will find that a lot of plants are dangerous, are poisonous, and even plants that can be used for medicinal purposes, if not prepared correctly or if not paired with the appropriate plants, with appropriate plants, can also be harmful to you. In the case of plants like dandelion and guinea hen weed, drying them before use is preferred because it prolongs the shelf life. Other plants like peppermint, cerasee, fever grass, or it's also known as lemongrass, can be picked, washed, and boiled for tea straight away. It's encouraged that you wash your plants before you use them because they are outside growing in the wild and you never know what they might come in contact with. So never just pick a plant straight and use it. It is always preferred that you wash thoroughly before use. Herbie advises that not all herbs can be used together, and concoction should be limited to three herbs each. Otherwise, it can have adverse effects on the user. On the user. Though there has been a resurgence in the indus- Though there has been a resurgence in the interest of herbal medicine, like most things, the use of traditional medicine has declined with each new generation. There are those who prefer conventional medicine over the bush teas of their forefathers, writing these practices off as old time something, and being skeptical about the effectiveness of these treatments. Mr. Ingram notes that although some herbal medicine can be good to manage lifestyle diseases, the most common of which being diabetes and hypertension, he does not see them as a replacement for treatment from medical professionals. A play on words, return to roots, symbolizes returning to the knowledge of herbal medicine passed down to us from our ancestors who did not have the luxuries of modern pharmaceuticals. The phrase also talks to the roots of the plant themselves, which has been a key part in sustaining life. Herbal medicine has been a major part of the healthcare system of both the rural and urban population for centuries, and its practice in Jamaica is quite common, with the knowledge of which plant is good for what ailment being passed down from generation to generation, from as far back as the generation of our African ancestors who brought this knowledge with them during the transatlantic slave trade. Since there was no proper health care provided by their masters, herbal medicine was a tool they used to help them survive the harsh conditions of slavery. The medicinal practices of our ancestors have persisted to contemporary times, adapting with new environments as their practitioners create diaspora communities around the world. Now, many Jamaicans still rely on herbal medicine to treat their illnesses using both indigenous plants and those brought during the Columbian exchange years ago. Even those in the Jamaican diaspora in the United States or in Europe still cling to the herbal medicine that they learned in Jamaica. It's very common to find plants like cerasee or fever grass being sold in West Indian stores in the States or in Europe, in Great Britain. Um, yeah, you find a lot of herbal remedies being sold in West Indian stores. Jamaicans can't live without their ginger tea or their cerasee. They often ask relatives for advice on remedies. So even when living abroad, and with sometimes in first world countries where you have the greatest access to healthcare, people will still rely on herbal remedies. Even though this presentation did name a oh, so I did name some common plants that are used in this presentation, but I will reiterate once again that it is not used for medical advice because I said earlier that when talking to the herb Mr. Ingram from Sturgetown, he specifically said that even though he has extensive knowledge of herbal medicine and he himself uses herbal medicine, he still encourages people to seek professional help because sometimes the use of herbal medicine can be detrimental. can be detrimental to your health. Even though this presentation did name a few plants, there are many others, a lot of other plants that I have not even covered. I just went over the most common ones to point out that when I named them, they a lot of the treatments were for colds or fever, and some said that that's because we live in a tropical environment and that's like the most common ailment. So I did name a few, but there are so many others. Feel free to come if I missed out any, or if there are any in your community that aren't as common as they are throughout the entire Jamaica. Feel free to comment it in the chat box. Um, there are so many others that I haven't even thought to mention. There are those who don't use herbal medicine, but it is very obvious that it's a very evident part of Jamaica's culture. And it's a part of Jamaica's culture that will never diminish, because even though the use might decrease, there are still those who will use their herbal medicine. So that's my presentation for today. Thank you for watching. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Does anyone have any questions for me? Um, Feel free to type it in the chat. I'll just hang on a bit to see if anybody asks any questions. Oh, and thank you so much for coming to the presentation today. The research team has worked very hard. I have worked very hard on this topic, and as I stated before, we do have our Vox Pop, where we went throughout Kingston and asked about people's perception of herbal remedies. I have an interview, a conversations with ACIJ with Mr. Joseph White. So after this, feel free to go and watch it. And on the ACIJ website, we do have a virtual exhibition on herbal medicine. Also, feel free to go to the ACIJ's website and look at that. Um, Oh, I see someone comment periwinkle. Periwinkle is another herbal plant. If Dan Atkinson, if you don't mind telling me what periwinkle is used for, if you're still there. I don't know what it's used for. I've heard of it vaguely, but it's not a plant I'm familiar with. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, or if there are no questions or any other comments, again, once again, thank you so much for coming to my presentation. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. Learned. I hope you learned something new, and have a great day. Stay safe, and yeah. Oh, okay. I just saw a comment that periwinkle is another name for Ramgo National. All right, thank you so much. All right.